I'm rusty. I'm out of practice. Okay, so the recording has started. Um, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to PA Adult Ed Resources within the next couple days. We will not be taking questions in the chat today. We have a packed presentation. You will be provided with the email addresses for the presenters, so you can direct your questions directly to them. And I believe I am now to turn this over to Alice.
Hi everybody. Indeed, I was actually going to just review that, and indeed, we are going to ask you to just ask questions directly, and we'll have the email address a couple of times, so it'll be available to you. So if you don't catch it the first time, no worries. We'll also put it up at the end as well, so you'll see it a few times. Okay, so we do have 4 agencies today. We do have kind of a busy schedule, so we're going to jump right in. At the end of each agency who's joining, you can see the names here. I will ask one question and then we'll move on to the next one. So let's get started. Our first agency is Catholic Charities, and they will be discussing recruitment and initial training of classroom aides. Presenting for them, as you can see, is Sarah Beck and Amy Clay. Ladies, we are thrilled to have you. Thank you so much. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. We're so happy to be here.
I have stopped my share. You may go ahead and share, Amy and Sarah.
Takes a few minutes to unmute. All right. Here we go.
All right. And full screen.
Full screen. Okay. Okay, we should be on full screen now. You guys should see our slides. So thanks for having us here today. My name is Sarah Beck. I'm the program manager for ESL services at Catholic Charities in Harrisburg. And I'm here with Amy Clay, who's my volunteer coordinator and all around awesome person. All right, so I'm just going to start you guys out with a little bit of background on Catholic Charities. We've been providing English as a second language classes in the greater Harrisburg area for a little over 40 years, and we've used volunteers all along. We are contracted as part of a consortium of providers in our area, and we work with about 130 ESL learners with PDE funding and an additional 60 immigrant and refugees over the year too. We have 25 active volunteer classroom aides right now, and the majority of the classroom aides who are with us now transitioned with us through to Zoom. They were active pre-pandemic. So starting out from our classroom aide recruitment perspective, we post ads on both Volunteer Match and Idealist websites. Both sites allow free volunteer position postings. About half of our current volunteers came through Volunteer Match. Regularly refreshing these ads is really important, as well as clearly stating time commitments in the ads. Kind of, sets you on the right path right from the start. Another our volunteers also come to us through word of mouth. Our volunteers, about a quarter of them right now, have started based on the recommendation of a friend who was volunteering or on the recommendation of a teacher. This creates deeper ties to the program and a stronger sense of community. Another option is reaching out to colleges and universities, but these connections can kind of lead to short-term engagement of volunteers. But if they have programs that have like adult ed or TESOL certificates, it's also just a good way to maybe look at getting people in the door as volunteers and eventually transitioning to employment at some point. A few other recruitment ideas that we came up with and that we use are ads at local libraries, which can be kind of hit or miss, but the connections you make with staff can be really beneficial, and not just to your tutor recruitment, but to your student recruitment. Retired teacher communities and groups like RSVP are excellent options as well. You get people who already have experience teaching. Faith-based organizations and their internal volunteer recruitment systems can be really helpful too. A lot of them have their own websites that they manage where they post volunteer positions, not only like within their parishes, but within the state. Another option is your program's graduates. This is one that we really like to use. So people who kind of test out of ESL, who then we can kind of encourage to come back and give us some time as volunteers in the classroom are great, or also students' family members. Those are great volunteers as well. Meeting with community service groups, again, is kind of hit or miss, but they do offer good exposure for your program, and they can lead to other opportunities. Like, if you're doing any kind of supply drives or anything like that, those are good options, good connections to have. You might want to also consider opening up your trainings, like your in-house trainings, to other programs that offer similar services in your area. I know in the Harrisburg area, we have quite a few churches who have ESL programs, like maybe a drop-in program 1 night a week or so. And a lot of times when we have our in-house trainings, we share those training opportunities with folks so that they can come in and, get to know us, and we can get to know them and maybe poach some volunteers along the way. And Amy's going to talk to you a little bit about classroom aide onboarding.
Yeah, so as Sarah said, I handle most of the hands-on recruiting and onboarding process of our volunteers. So initially that looks like the majority of the folks I've onboarded have reached out to us first and expressed their interest. And so I meet with them and go over the background of our program and some general student demographics and the makeup both of culture and language heritage. And then we go over the class schedule and mention, where we have needs for them to look at being plugged into. And then we go over the expectations of how we use volunteers in the classroom. And there's a bit of compare and contrast with how we do that, how we did that in person versus on Zoom, and asking if they're comfortable using Zoom or not, because there's a wide range of the Zoom skills that I found even within our current volunteers. So walking them through that if need be. And then we go over the application process, which is pretty extensive for us, but just being upfront about that and being there as an established point of contact through the entire process has helped. And then, next slide. Thank you. So once the application materials are sent out to them and then returned to us, we have a second meeting, and that's just to close any application gaps. A lot of it is getting the references back and points of contact with that, answering any questions they may have had in the process, and then scheduling an initial observation in our classrooms. So there's all points. Okay. So the stage one then would be in the classroom observing. Again, this is over Zoom currently for us. So our program onboarding requires that each prospective volunteer then observes levels 1, 2, and 3. So the beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So they get a good idea of how best they might fit in. And then we hold a debriefing after the observations, and because we get volunteers who are retired teachers or who have been in school systems with diverse learners all the time, or we have people who come from IT or hospice or all walks of life. So just kind of getting them all on the same page. And so we also go over the basics of adult learning theory and language acquisition, and then we also try to open a dialogue about specific strengths and barriers that our learners face, but also their motivations. And we have some helpful teacher tips and tutoring resources for them. And then we move ahead with the classroom placement based on organizational need, but also their preference. And then we also keep them in the loop about ongoing training options that we provide. And then,
yeah, and we're gonna, if we click one more time, we've got our contact information there. So I know we're not really doing questions, but if anyone has any questions, you should feel free to email us, and we'll get back to you.
Thank you so much. Lots of great information there that I think lots of agencies will have questions about too. I have one question for you. How do you retain your classroom aides, and approximately how many stay with you longer than a few months?
Okay, well, I'm gonna answer the percentage part first. So I would say because our application process is a little intense, basically once we get people to that application process and through it, we know that they're serious, and about 90% of the people who go through the full application process with us they continued for a minimum of 6 months. Average time for our volunteer classroom aides right now is anywhere from a year to 2.5 years on average. And we do get people who kind of stop out for a while and then rotate back in. As far as retention goes, I think that the most important thing you can do is to be super clear from the very beginning about your expectations of the classroom aides and the requirements. Just being upfront is important, and to do the very best you can to kind of keep the chaos at a minimum, which can, be difficult. But I feel like everybody is comforted by routine, so knowing what's expected of them and when is important. And the last thing that I think we've really focused on, especially during the pandemic, is making sure that volunteers understand that our students are resilient. There's so much talk about barriers in adult education, and I think sometimes we lose focus of how strong and resilient our clients are, and the wealth of background and experiences that they're bringing with them. So I think that helps volunteers not see our students as people who are just, full of all these deficits, but they're full of assets, and we're just helping them make the most of them.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. I especially love the part about being realistic about the demands of being a tutor. I think that's great, really helpful. Thank you so much. That's great. Okay, I'm now going to hand it over to the next group, and that will be handing it directly to Cheryl Parker. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thanks, Alice. Thank you. And thanks and welcome to our next panelists who are from Beyond Literacy. Volunteer Manager Mercy Howard, Director of Education Gianna Brisbane, and the 2021-22 Outstanding Volunteer of the Year, Alan Urich. They will focus on technology with volunteer aides. I asked Beyond Literacy to address technology because I had seen a note in their PID minutes that observed, as our instructors improve using technology, that transfers to our students. Mercy Howard, to you.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I really appreciate that nice, warm welcome. I'm going to share my screen with everyone and get started. All right, welcome again, everyone. My name is Mercy Howard. I'm the volunteer manager at Beyond Literacy. And today joining me again is Gianna Bristol, who's our director of education, and our lovely long-term volunteer, Alan Urich, who has been newly announced the 2021-2022 Peace Outstanding Volunteer of the Year. So like Sherry had mentioned earlier during our introduction, we really wanted to focus on a lot of effective recruitment methods here at BLIT. And the most, I should say, popular method is word of mouth from our current volunteers, former volunteers as well, partnerships, teachers. We also have some students who will refer family members as well to Beyond Literacy as volunteers. We utilize our monthly newsletters to share a lot of our services and to recruit volunteers. We also use our social media platforms to invite a lot of volunteers into our program, and then of course to utilize a lot of their essential skills that they will have. A lot of other ways that we also recruit volunteers is on our online interest form on our BLIT website. That is kind of a short information form, just kind of sharing a little bit about the volunteer, what they're looking for. I check that on a regular weekly basis, connect with the volunteers and get them started with the process. We also get a lot of referrals from the Office of Children and Youth, Children and Families, the OCF. So we get a lot of volunteers who are interested in supporting education or even in adult services as well. And last but not least, we also are in local community events when we're out and promoting BLIT. We are out there servicing and recruiting volunteers as well. And just to emphasize again on the technology training that we have supporting for our volunteers, once a volunteer and I are connected, I host orientation just to review the B-Lit program requirements, expectations, just to have them knowing what is onboarding coming into the volunteer program as well. So we go over a lot of the classroom's expectations. We review some classes expectations. We also do background check and any other requirement that B-Lit has for all of our volunteers and for employees as well. We also require a minimum for tech experience. So I talk a lot with the volunteers about what are some of your tech skills do you have, knowing that most of our classes are hybrid. So Zoom is really important, having some knowledge of Zoom. Google Classroom, we use that a lot. So those are really important aspects of a lot of the volunteers coming on board with us. We utilize our PA adult education resources. During orientation, I signed the volunteers up for our non-tutors and classroom training modules. That is where they're able to go on and learn a little bit more in depth of all the different expectations in the classroom, different subject materials that they would need that would be really helpful working with the teachers. And once they're completed that, I then collect those certificates and keep that into the file. And through the PA Adult Education Resources, they run what is called a webinar series for all our classroom and tutor aides. So on a regular monthly basis, they host special different series trainings where a volunteer can take up that opportunity to, refresh any subject or any issues that they might be facing or wanting more information on. On a quarterly basis, I host a lot of meetings for any additional resources and support updates to just keep our volunteer alert and keep them engaged with Beyond Literacy, any expectation or requirements throughout the program year. Of course, if any additional technology training is required, we are able to connect our volunteers to our digital literacy instructors and, of course, our student support program services. So this is where they're able to have like a one-on-one based training and really go in depth of any issues as far as technology that they need that extra support in. Another opportunity the volunteers can take is having that extra additional support with their assigned teacher, just to know what other requirements that would be needed and how to engage into the classroom as well over Zoom if they need that extra support. And finally, if a volunteer is in need of a reliable device or a computer, we are able to offer them a new device through our digital navigation program. We recently were able to do so with one of our volunteers. She was very appreciative because that was very helpful for her to get online and also share her screen with the students and just make the experience much easier and transitional for her as well. A little bit about some effective retention methods that we use. I take pride in really getting to know our new volunteers and what motivation that they had coming to B-Lit. Hearing about their stories, what any special technology skills that they have, ways that they would like to be contacted, any type of particular program or interest that they're really acquiring while they're coming here to volunteer with us. I also do a lot of data tracking. So I track our volunteer hours. Well, I send it to our data team, but they track the volunteer hours, of course, because they have a requirement of 4 hours of weekly basis. I also track the assigned instructor with the volunteers, the different classes they're in, the department, any special projects throughout the year that they're in. Some projects could be a mock interview that special teachers are hosting, so volunteers are able to take that opportunity to help out with that. Any special choices, subject choices, particularly math or reading or ESL, I also am able to track those different type of data as well. And any communication stats, so who are more engaging, who is more available. We do frequently send out requests for substitute requests or any support tutoring. Volunteers who are more engaging, I'm like, okay, I know who I can really rely on once I send out this request, and I'm able to be more engaging with them. And a little bit about continuing with that, just really providing more resources to our volunteer, connecting them through our network through our agency. So, a lot of volunteers, once they're in the classroom, they're also very curious about working with the student support team. So really connecting them to that department and seeing how they're able to further their skills into really supporting our students and the teachers as well. And also any tech, connecting the volunteer to our tech department if they're having any technical issues, so they're able to just really get that extra support in if I'm not around or the teacher is not around. And finally, really recognizing our volunteers is really important here. So we do a lot of shout outs with our Beat Lit all staff meeting. So we are able to shout out volunteers and just really recognize them for all the hard work, their dedication, and just the outstanding time that they have had here with us. And we also features a lot of stories on our monthly newsletters with our BLIT bulletin. So we're frequently updating stories and recognizing volunteers and just really appreciating all their hard work as well. And I personally like to follow up and stay in touch with my volunteers and just saying what can I do outside of when I place you with that teacher? What other areas that you need that extra support in? And we just recently also had our annual volunteer appreciation event that went very well. Some volunteers showed up in person, some was over Zoom, and we just, really gathered together and share a lot of different interests and just share a lot of stories and appreciation for the work that they did. And I am pretty much so grateful for working with the volunteers here at BLIT. I learned a lot about myself in my work and a lot about their dedication that they come into helping out with BLIT and the students and as well as the teacher. I'm going to pass this down to Gianna.
Right. Good morning, everyone. Excuse me. So I'm coming as the director of education, but also as an instructor. I recently transitioned into this position, but I've been teaching with Beyond Literacy for the past 6 years, and I still teach. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we incorporate our classroom volunteers into the educational process and like what's the magic for having our volunteers have a good experience in the classroom. So, one of the main things that I do when I work with volunteers is I ask them what their interests are and what they would like to do in the class. So, some volunteers are more comfortable with technology and others are not. And so, you might have some volunteers who come in and they know Zoom, they know all of the programs, Khan Academy, and every other site that we use. And then you have some who are a little bit less familiar with all of this. So you might have someone who comes in and says, okay, I would like to control the waiting room on Zoom, or I want to take attendance. You may have some volunteers who come in person because we offer high flex instruction, and they might want to work more with the students who are in person. You also have sometimes where one of the things that I do regularly in my math class is we break up into breakout rooms for small groups. And so my classroom volunteer will work with some of the students on topics that they are either struggling with or will flip. So I might take the learners who are having a more difficult time, and my volunteer might work with the ones who are kind of excelling on a topic, and then, vice versa. Um, and then you have some volunteers who, they just want to, be there, and they want to just be available for whatever you need them. So it's really about asking the volunteer, what would they like to do and giving them that opportunity to shine. Another thing that I do in working with volunteers is that I talk to them about the lessons and like where we are in our planning process for that particular cycle so that they're aware of what's going to happen in the classroom. And they also give input as far as like what they think or, well, I saw that such and such was having a really difficult time with this. Maybe we should go over it again. And then the final thing and the most important thing is to be open minded. Um, initially, I was kind of nervous about working with volunteers because I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, am I supposed to have something planned for them? But the reality of it is that if the volunteers are there because they want to be there, and if you're open minded, then you will find that they bring so much knowledge to the classroom and they will really be helpful to you. They might help you to find better ways to teach a particular topic. They help a lot with classroom management and things like that. So if you're open-minded with them, with your classroom volunteers, then you will have a really enjoyable experience, and your students will also have a really great time working with the volunteers. So that's it from me. And next up will be Alan, our outstanding volunteer of the year for 2021, 2022.
Thank you, Gianna. Thanks, Mercy, also, and I appreciate so much that you put my name in as a nominee for that award. It's really humbling, and it was a great experience being at the PACE conference the other day and being exposed to a lot more about adult education beyond what I know through my work at Beyond Literacy. I just briefly wanted to explain my entry into Beyond Literacy. I retired 4 years ago from a career as a city planner in Philadelphia and in consulting, and after that went on to take about 60 hours worth of training at the city's Office of Children and Families, which provides adult education training for tutoring and classroom assistance. And through that referral was able to come to Beyond Literacy. And I've been basically working with the same classroom teacher, Larry Hastings, for the whole time, beginning in the early part of 2019, and worked in the classroom until COVID. And then we went online, and we have had pretty good experience, transitioning to the Zoom only environment. And then because the school opened to in-person teaching about a year ago, I was eager to come back and work in the classroom. But we've had really outstanding success, I would say, with the technology that we have, which includes these D10 monitors that allow us to be hybrid and have both students Zoom in from home as well as have a classroom with students in person, and everybody gets to see what each other is working on. So I think it's been a really seamless experience for me from that technological perspective. The challenges that we have really rely on the inability of many students to not have technology other than cell phones to get to Zoom into the classroom with. We do at Beyond Literacy provide laptops to students after a certain period of their engagement with us, so that's a much better learning tool for them. And I think the ones that are able to participate in person and on Zoom, flip back and forth, probably are the ones that are doing the best of all the learners, because they have the experience with the technology and they also get in classroom attention. So those are my thoughts about our technology and how it supports us. I've had a terrific experience at Beyond Literacy, and I look forward to continuing helping with classroom teachers there. That's the end of our presentation. I do have to leave soon after our presentation to go to Beyond Literacy for to start class at noon. So I will miss the second half of this webinar, but I appreciate that I've been able to participate. So back to you, Cheryl.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Another terrific panel with valuable information. What experiences. Thank you indeed. Alice, back to you.
Wow, that was great. And thank you so much to Alan for volunteering. Wow, Volunteer of the Year, very cool. Thank you so much. Next, we have Keystone Opportunity Center, and they'll be discussing using classroom aids in the classroom. Presenting for Keystone will be Sylvie's, I'm sorry, I'm going to say your last name incorrectly. I'm so sorry. So you can say it. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry. And Barry Schwartz, who is the instructor and also high school HSE coordinator. Thank you so much, guys. I leave it to you.
Okay, can you all see?
We're good. We can see.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. So, hi everyone, my name is Sylvie Zackley and I'm the tutor coordinator at Keystone Opportunity Center. I started working with KOC as an ESL teacher in 2001, and I have been in my current position for 6+ years. I'm also responsible for online registration and CASAS testing. Today, I will be presenting about our volunteer classroom aides and how we manage the challenges of the transition to online learning in 2020 and beyond. Okay. The mission of the Keystone Opportunity Center is to help the community members in need by offering a comprehensive array of social services that educate, encourage, and empower them to become self-sufficient. And our volunteers, just like us, they wear many hats. So, for example, a volunteer in the food pantry might also be working one-on-one with tutoring student because, you know, being a reading specialist allows her to do that. And also community ambassador helping out at local events could also be an aide in our online classes. So we share a lot of our volunteers. And going on to now, let's go on to the topic of COVID and how it changed our program in a matter of weeks. So in 2020, when we all became part of the COVID challenge. I'm sure everybody remembers that day. As soon as the lockdown was announced by the governor, I sent an email to all the aides and tutors, and I told them that classes were canceled for 2 weeks and also all in-person tutoring. The next day, I called one of my most valuable player tutors who once mentioned a free online platform, and I had a chat with him about it. I was also a presenter on GoToMeeting a while back, so I had a general idea of how it all worked. Our director, Susan, got us on a video meeting very quickly, and planning began for next steps. While the teachers were getting ready for online classes, I worked with the aides and with the help of our in-house professional development specialist. I called and emailed and Zoomed with them and surveyed their preferences regarding returning to classes in this very new format. Some of them said, yeah, absolutely. And some of them said, I'll see you when things are back to normal, or whatever that might mean. And I made sure to keep the lines of communication open with everyone, and I checked in regularly. I also encouraged the teachers to keep in contact with their aides and keep them up to date with our progress. In a few weeks, we were online, and I was happy to see a lot of my volunteers back in the classroom virtually. Some data to illustrate where we were before COVID, right after, and currently. By the time COVID hit in 2020, we had 18 classroom aid assignments filled. They were all in person, of course. Almost all of our 20+ classes had an aide. Most of them had been with us for years. I think that was one of the reasons why so many of them stayed. They had such good chemistry with the teachers they were helping and the students that they wanted to be back, just needed to be shown how Zoom works, how they can help, so they are not just another face on the screen, to quote Alan, who is one of our beloved aides. So I have to do this shout out because he is one of our volunteers with the most hours out of the whole group. So back to this data then. Right after COVID, during the first quarter of 2020-21, 7 classroom aides returned, so about 40%. I'm going to mention Alan again here, who volunteered in 2 classes, total of 4 nights every single week. All right, so I kept talking to my aides, welcoming new aides, and a year later we doubled our numbers, and we also restarted some in-person classes. Right now we are at about pre-COVID levels, but since most of our classes are online, the majority of our aides are online as well. Okay, and here's a little then and now. Picture of Cindy. Cindy actually trails Alan in volunteer hours, although she has overtaken him a few times. So on the left, you can see in Cindy online, and there's Alan too, little stars. And this is Joy's beginner ESL class in our program. They were a fantastic team before COVID, and they wanted to stay together. So you really persevere and learn new skills when you want to stay with your friends, as their example clearly shows. And now let me show you Shapna, who's in our Melanie's beginner class before and after. So I'm so happy that she stayed with us. And now about our aides. So let me tell you about our aides. So first of all, our aides are very different personalities. They have very diverse talents and teaching styles. They are as illustrated here, but not limited to these 4, and also any combination of these traits. So we have the tax savvy. These are the aides who were on board the minute I asked them. Yep, I have a laptop. Yes, I use Zoom. Sure, I know how it works. Send me the link. See you soon. Done. So that was very easy. And second, we have the admin. These aides took on the responsibility of taking attendance when we were in person. Online, they were made co-hosts so they could manage the waiting room, greet everyone, help students who joined on iPhones or laptops borrowed from their kids to rename themselves so it is easier to know who everyone is when we pull Zoom attendance. At the beginning, they would send reminder texts, help students sign in, resend links to those who needed it, text the student support coordinator with names of students who were absent, or if they needed help communicating or troubleshooting, etc. They also keep students on track during the lesson by typing directions, page numbers, new vocabulary, or answering questions, or whatever else in the chat box. And then we have the sidekick. So when I talk to aides during our in-house tutor training about helping in the classroom, I often refer to the relationship with the teacher as a Batman-Robin partnership. The teacher teaches and you're helping, following their lead. These aides might not feel 100% comfortable doing their own breakout sessions, but work well once the teacher spells out exactly what they need to do. And then fourth, we have the associate. These aides are using breakout rooms with ease, come with ideas on how to enhance a lesson, ready to jump in, do whatever is needed with little or no help. So some of our aides have 2 or more of these traits and some traits that I didn't include. The important thing is to recognize what they are good at, what they enjoy, and use their talents accordingly. And now I also included a few testimonials from our teachers and aides. So Joan teaches our evening college and career ESL class, which is our highest level. She worked with Alan before in person, and they really hit it off, as you can see from her quote. And Alan was worried about being just another face online. So I talked to Joan, and I also Zoomed with him and showed him the useful features, and they were off. So they're a very good pair. And now Helen is one of our busiest and most accomplished teachers at Keystone, and she's also our in-house professional development specialist in addition to teaching 3 classes. I knew her aide was in good hands, even though she wasn't able to join us online right away. As you see it in her quote, Helen reached out to her when Maureen indicated that she was ready to return. Maureen was unsure how she could be helpful online. Helen talked to her and made sure Maureen was comfortable with using Zoom and trained her on the useful features. They had a long professional relationship before COVID, built on respect and very good communication. So all they needed was a little Zoom tutorial and a good conversation, and they were off. So, and now I would like to introduce Barry Schwartz, who is our high school equivalency coordinator and teacher at Keystone. As Barry has worked with the most aides in our program, here he is to give you the teacher's perspective. Barry?
Thank you, Sylvie. I want to echo what you said about keeping our aides and tutors, advancing their resolve and thriving in difficult times. 3 of my tutors transitioned from in-person ABE HSE support to remote aides. And no, I don't call them admins or sidekicks or associates. I call them Sandy, Carol, Ryan, and Jack. These are 4 intelligent but very different partners. So I call them by their given name, and I call them often, or I text or email, or even Zoom collaborate. Yes, communication is so important in establishing a productive working relationship. I get to know my partners and they get to know me. We strive to be in sync. Their efforts represent me, as well as Keystone Opportunity Center, as well as the Pennsylvania Adult Education. Likewise, my efforts impact the effectiveness in doing their jobs. So being in sync is critical. My aides know my commitment and my approach, and I know each aide. The one who wants to help only with language arts and social studies, the one who prefers to work one-on-one, the aide who wants to stay remote until further notice, and the one who wants to do more math, please. So when it's feasible, we try to match the material to the presenter. Beyond the curriculum, I encourage the aides to share their experiences, how they learned the material, how they used it, how challenging it could be, and how it relates to workforce development. Students appreciate when aides share their truths. So when I compose a lesson, I spell out the learning objectives in their roles. Yes, they do all the presenting, the breakouts, but my aides and I don't function as the sage and the stage More is the guide on the side. The aide gets the assignment in advance through email. Sometime before the class, we discuss the material. We tweak what needs tweaking, and once we're comfortable, the aide owns the activity. I try to pop into the room when I give my group a break. The real boss is the goal set by the adult learner. The adults compose and articulate a new academic goal every month. The aides usually lead off and model the goal setting process in a large group setting. I make sure my aides know each student's goals, needs, and recent progress. The magic happens in the breakout rooms where the aide, armed with ability and a quality lesson, interacts with the adult, armed with a determination and an academic goal. At the conclusion of the breakout, I solicit feedback. Sometimes we meet after class, sometimes we communicate through email, but I document what they're able to cover, what they feel was successful, what was a challenge, and yes, what bombed. I constantly communicate my thanks for giving them themselves and their precious time. Someday in the not too distant future, I see myself volunteering in the classroom, and I ask myself, what would I want from my cooperating teacher? That's exactly what I try to deliver to my aides today. My aides are comfortable with the routines we've established, and now we're discussing our future with the addition of high flex instruction. We'll face new challenges, new roles, and new approaches as a union. I used to plead with my aides to come and celebrate a graduation. Now I just mention HSE completion, and one of them or all of them attend. It's great to see goal attainment and the team celebrating. I know and they know that they played a big part in their success. I turn it over to you guys. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Sylvie and Barry. I love that. I especially love, I'm going to say it one more time, not the sage on the stage, but the guide on the side. I love that. I'm stealing it immediately. You've been warned. Thank you very, very much. I do have a question for you. You guys have talked about some great classroom use, you know, how to really enjoy having them, and I love the different types. That's just spot on. What is your best recruitment method, and has that changed over the last few years?
So our recruitment of tutors is very similar to a recruitment of students. We are very lucky we are part of Keystone Opportunity Center, and we are able to do these Keystone Media Blasts when we have something coming up, and a lot of word of mouth, because I have tutors who will go out there and tell what a fantastic time we are having with Keystone, and then bring back like, you know, that brother, their neighbor, a cousin, you know, someone from church. And we leave flyers at local libraries and, you know, other places where people go. And our recruitment method may be a little bit heavier online, but you know, not much has really changed because we were pretty active online before the pandemic. So, you know, I think that's it.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm sure there's some great ideas for lots of agencies across the state. All right, so before we move on, I just want to remind you that Christine is putting the contact information for each agency in the chat. So feel free to look there, and we will also post it on the last slide of the webinar, so just so that you know. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Mary Wilson.
Great. Thank you, Alice. Remarkable information and expertise that has been shared by our panelists thus far. Thank you so much again. And for our final presentation today, we have Jen Kasimi, Director of Instruction and Curriculum, at Delaware County Literacy Council. And she will discuss today provisions of resources to classroom aides. Jen has been with DCLC since 2018 and has over 23 years of experience in the adult education field. So I will now hand it over to Jen.
Thank you, Mary, and good morning, everyone. Screen here. All right, we should be able to see. And now Delaware County Literacy Council has been serving here in the county for over 40 years, and we started as a tutoring program We provide a variety of resources to classroom aides so they can provide sufficient one-on-one or small group instruction during class. In order for aides to achieve this goal, they need to have the knowledge, the access to resources, and the opportunity to apply what they learn. So I thought it best to share our resources in stages as we provide them to the classroom aides throughout the training. During the initial stage of training, our goal is to help the classroom aide gain an understanding of who adult learners are, how they learn, and several strategies they can use to provide sufficient instruction to learners. So, to achieve this objective, classroom aides begin by completing the online course Working with Adult Literacy Learners. That's offered through Pro Literacy's Education Network. There are many benefits to this course, but I particularly like it because there are several student tutor scenarios presented, which give the class aide an opportunity to problem solve a tutoring situation and then find strategies to improve the instruction. Another resource we use, which complements the scenarios in the online course, are strategies created from my own experiences working with classroom aides, as well as feedback from our teachers. This document provides suggestions for classroom aides when working with students one-on-one in small groups, and we call that our volunteer classroom guide. It has suggestive strategies like talking through the math process out loud when solving a problem so the student can hear your thinking, or ideas to engage with RLA text through collaborative oral reading and then follow up text dependent questions. Next, our classroom aide combines the knowledge gained from the online course and the volunteer classroom guide to what they learned by observing a class that they are interested in volunteering with, whether it's ABE, ASE, or ESL. The class aide documents their experience on our classroom aide observation form. This gives them time to look during the instruction when they could have helped a student or supported instruction with the teacher. They could even determine strategies that would be best given for each situation. The final resource in this stage is the time the class aide spends with the IHPDS or me. I schedule time with the classroom aide to discuss their experience with the observation. I make suggestions, we problem solve instructional scenarios that they observed, and we identify ways to help, like how to elicit group discussion during a breakout room activity with ESL students. I reference our resources as we talk things out. During stage 2, resources for classroom aides begin with standard things like establishing a meeting with the teacher and providing the relevant books and materials for class. But I just want to echo what everyone else has said before me, that the teacher is a vital resource for classroom aides because they work with them to identify the students who need the additional support and also explain how the class will be structured and where they can fit in to provide that support. So it's important to give them the time to meet with the teachers. Most of our classroom aides work in a remote classroom. In order to provide quality one-on-one instruction, they need to be familiar with Zoom. That's our platform of choice at DCLC, as well as ways to use and engage supplemental resources like Newsela and Khan Academy. To support class aides in learning more about these tools, DCLC teachers created short videos on how to interface with Zoom, utilize online materials like Ventures for English, and ways to access Newsela. These resources help the classroom aide understand how to use the tools during class while working in a breakout room. Finally, class aides need to understand how to utilize the teacher's Google Classroom so they can access the materials and the assignments the student needs help with. One of our teachers created a video for class aides which demonstrates the features of Google Classroom and how to access those materials. Connecting all of these tools and getting comfortable using them is necessary in order for the aide to provide that instructions to students. Finally, DCLC offers continuous support to our class aides with a variety of resources throughout the program year. First, we send out a survey to gain professional development needs and ideas from the class aides and the tutors. We then design in-house professional development and or resources around these suggestions. In fact, this is why we created all of our workshops and videos on Zoom, Newsela, and Google Classroom. We have a resource bank for tutor materials on our website, including those videos demonstrating a variety of strategies to use during one-on-one or small group instruction. For class aides looking for other topics, we suggest modules in the PD portal as an excellent resource for finding tutor training that rounds out materials DCLC does not have in-house. Things like tutoring students with learning differences. We also suggest resources from outside community partners, like the Center for Alternative Learning, as well as conferences like PACE, where class aides can learn about new resources in the field. I appreciate your time and interest in DCLC resources. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions or even any interest in the materials that you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. And I will say I had the opportunity to view DCLC's training videos, and they are quite remarkable and useful. So please reach out to Jen as well as our other panelists with questions and for information and resources that they shared today. I do have one quick question for you, Jen. I know our other panelists shared some strategies in their own recruitment efforts as well as retention. Could you share with the group the most beneficial strategy DCLC uses in recruitment efforts as well as retention of classroom aides?
Absolutely. So, I looked back through our most recent applications, and because we have a reputation as a volunteer agency, most of our volunteer traffic comes directly from people conducting internet searches about volunteer opportunities. And because they come to us directly through the website, we went back and improved the layout of information for potential volunteers just in the last few months. We did that back in February. And one thing in particular we did really to recruit more tutor aides was to create a separate application for the opportunity. So we made it easier to find, put it directly under the tab of volunteers. And since we made that adjustment, I have trained 3 new classroom aides since February. So I know that changing the layout has really made a difference.
Okay.
And I think, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And I was thinking with retention, just really echoing a lot of what everyone else has said, that it's important to build that relationship between the tutor, the teacher, and the staff. Those of us that are working with the volunteers, we have a volunteer coordinator that reaches out to our aides and our other volunteers twice a month, not just to gain hours, but also to check in and say, how are you doing? How can we support you? And of course, we continue to let them know about professional development opportunities throughout the year, whether it's us or an outside agency, just letting them know that we want to support them in their goals.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I will now hand it back over to Alice.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mary. And thank you to everybody. What a great wealth of knowledge from all over the state. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure that all of these great ideas will be helpful to many students to come. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation today. If you do have any questions, here's the contact information. And that is it. We are finished for the day. So take care and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.